Hello, everyone. Leslie Ruthie here. I'm your host today for Gaming and Leisure's Voice. Today, we're speaking with Fred Brown. He's the CTO of Virtual Procurement. Hi, Fred. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Leslie. Thank you. Pleasure, absolute pleasure to be here. Kind of a long-time listener, first-time caller. Absolutely love the voice. So, uh, again, thank you for having me.
Longtime listener, thank you so much. Jeannie puts so much into making sure that she has the proper conduit and exciting conduit. So thank you for being a listener. We really appreciate that. If I can indulge a small amount for the audience, can you tell us a little bit about virtual procurement? What's in the name? What does virtual procurement do? Just a high level. Think about a long elevator ride. What would you say the company is?
Sure. So in a nutshell, we save and recover money for our customers, mainly in the technology space. But what we've learned is our processes and the tools that we've built are really applicable to anything that a company may purchase. Our largest verticals right now are gaming, of course, and healthcare. And our success is really attributed to, I mean, not only having an amazing, kind of service delivery team, but a unique agentic AI based tool called VVI or Virtual Vendor Index, which is a kind of a forward-thinking pricing analytics tool where we
Nice.
could feed in deals and it helps us to figure out what is the best price or what is the right price that the customer should be paying. And in addition to that, we have a lot of proprietary processes that were learned from mostly from Scott, our founder's background in sales, where he kind of reverse engineered the process to become a customer advocate. So those two things are really what drives our success in making sure that customers are paying a fair price.
A fair price. And that's so critical to make sure that they're able to see all the options out there, get the fair price, and feel comfortable about moving forward with whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish. You said healthcare and gaming. That's quite different sides of the pendulum here. How did virtual procurement get into the gaming business?
So I think a lot of it actually started with me engaging them from Mohegan. But interestingly enough, there's actually they sound very different, but at the end of the day, they're very similar businesses. Outside of the kind of the main IT systems, when you think about it, the systems are very similar. Healthcare has an EMR system. Gaming has the slot management or the kind of gaming management system. A hotel is very similar with beds and hospitality stuff. So the business models
That's
and the
true.
purchasing trends are yeah, they're
Yeah.
very surprisingly similar. So our process applies well to both.
I'd never looked at it that way. I've always been in the gaming business and never really looked over the fence. And you're right. It's heads and beds and, and really
Exactly,
making sure you're at high occupancy.
exactly.
Yeah, and
For
selling all the
different,
peripheral.
yeah, exactly. For different reasons, but still the same kind of foundation.
Still
Yeah.
the same concept. So what was the driver to start the company?
So in the company was started in 2009 by Scott Robbins, who's our CEO. He at the time was working for, and he definitely tells the story so much better than I do. So hopefully folks get a chance to hear it from him because he's so passionate about it. But he was in the sales capacity at the time. Um, and what he learned was that through over architecture and a whole bunch of other things, that a lot of times customers were just overpaying.
Yeah.
So he kind of took that idea and actually he first engineered a recovery model because we don't only save money, we recover, which means we can go back in time and get money back for customers if they paid too much for something or the finance deal wasn't right. So he kind of took that model, left the company that he was at, where he was actually very successful, in an interesting time in his life, kids in school, um,
Oh,
it kind of
so
just
critical.
taking a
Yeah.
chance, and it paid off. Within a year or so, he had one very large, successful client in the healthcare space, and it just kind of blossomed from there,
from
to
there
where we are today.
to being a mother, a single mother, leaving to start something that is a leap of faith, and kudos to Scott for that. That's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So, Fred, we have a lot of chatting to do today. But first, we have to thank our sponsors. Somebody has to pay us and pay for this. And we'll be right back after this short break, and we will get right into it. Agilysys helps the gaming industry realize its full potential through exceptional technology that goes beyond what other tech providers have trained hospitality to expect. We built our state-of-the-art hospitality-focused software for continuous innovation, industry-leading data sharing, maximum flexibility for best-of-breed performance, and smooth ecosystem integration, and an always learning guest profile engine so you can create personal experiences. It's time for hospitality to go beyond with technology from Agilysys. So welcome back, everyone, and let's dive right in. How did you first learn about virtual procurement's services?
Sure. So in 2015, so prior to working for virtual procurement, I spent about 14 years in gaming, all at Mohegan Sun. In 2015, I was at the Connecticut property as the corporate CIO. My boss at the time was Bobby Soper, who obviously is very well known, especially in this community. A
We all
great
know
moderator,
Bobby.
great friend to all. He was introduced to VPS through Dan Garrow, also another name
Oh,
that
yes.
everybody recognizes. And interestingly enough, one of my predecessors at Mohegan, because he was CIO there at one point. So Dan brought them to Bobby because he was using them at the time. He was the CIO at Baha Mar. So during their build, they were using VPS pretty heavily to save money on all the purchases for that property build. So he highly recommended it. Bobby then brought it to me and said, I think you should talk to these guys. Obviously, both of us have a ton of respect still for Dan. So I set up a call. Scott came in and kind of pitched that whole idea that I kind of just described to me at Mohegan.
That's fantastic. And what did they tell you they do?
Pretty much the same stuff I just said. It was being able to save and recover money, helping us in the last mile of procurement. The promise was that they could do it without changing any of the technology that was involved in the contract, without changing the vendors, without impacting the vendor relationship, which was one of my biggest concerns. And all through this pricing analytics tool and all these processes, that again he was very, very confident that he would be able to save us money in pretty much anything we were spending on.
So, despite the fact that Bobby brought them to you, and we'll get to that later, but here's a company sitting in front of you and they say, "Oh, we're not gonna impact anything, but we're gonna save you money." And you're probably sitting there lifting an eyebrow going,
No doubt,
mm-hmm.
no doubt.
Yeah, were you suspect? What was your initial reaction?
Sounds too good to be true.
Yeah.
Like, who is this guy? Which is pretty funny to say today. Who is this guy? Who does he think he is? How is he going to save me money? Because I was convinced at the time that I was a pretty good negotiator. I mean, it turns out, fast forward, I really wasn't that good of a negotiator, but really just who are they and how are they going to be able to accomplish this?
And Scott is an enigma unto himself. So here he is sitting in front of you, and he's talking about the culture. He's talking about how to move forward. What was the feeling around all of that?
So I'm glad you mentioned culture because that was a big thing that got brought up, and I found this very refreshing because most vendors don't really talk like this. But he said we could only be successful if there's a good cultural fit. And at the time and to
Hmm.
this day, I'm
Yeah.
still very, very big on culture and relationships. And it basically meant that there needed to be mutual respect between the organizations for our role in this relationship. Meaning, if we needed to follow certain processes to make BPS successful, we needed to do that, and not without question, but not get in their way and not have people that are going to stand in their way. And he was very transparent in saying, you know what, sometimes companies just aren't into that. They have other agendas or whatever. It's just not a good fit. And he said, it is what it is. If that's the case, we'll just walk away. We'll shake hands, and maybe in the
Oh,
future. Which again, I found very refreshing.
that's
So
very
culture was
refreshing.
a very big piece.
I've done a lot of deals with consulting companies when I was on the other side of the desk, as I call it. And then when I became a vendor, I'm sitting here, talking to potential clients, and culture is a big deal because a lot of consulting companies, for example, come in and they're very regimented. Yes, they have a process and it's their tried true way of getting something done. But you have to be able to be a willow with your customer, your client, and work around some processes or work around whatever it is that's causing the bottleneck. So yeah, I agree. Culture is very important because it can make or break a project.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And will, I mean, that's a great way to look at it. But unfortunately, there are a lot of vendors out there that just they're not that transparent. It's all about, we know 100% that we can help you. If it's a square peg in a round hole, so be it. We'll make it work. And that's just not always the case. It can't always be successful. So again, I appreciated that kind of that take from him.
And is that why you decided to give them a try, or was Bobby like, we're going to do this?
No, no.
I wouldn't think
Bobby,
Bobby would do that.
no, that wasn't his MO then. It's certainly not his MO now.
Never.
Um, Bobby at the time, well, he has always kind of epitomized the leader that he surrounds himself with people that he trusts, and he gives them the tools they need to succeed. And this was no different. It was, here they are. Dan highly recommends them. Here's some of the success they had at Bahamar. But at the end of the day, you do what you want with them. If you don't, that's fine. We'll just go back to Dan and say we talked to them. It's just not a good fit, and it's kind of neither here nor there. So there was absolutely no pressure from
That's
Bobby.
great.
Yeah. Um, what really convinced me though was, again, the culture thing. I really enjoyed that initial conversation with Scott. Despite being a little bit skeptical about the process and not really understanding how they were going to make it work, um, I was always one and continue to be one to give companies a chance, right? If there could be a potential fit, most importantly, if it could have a meaningful impact on the company, like a positive impact, why not?
Why not?
Especially in IT, right? The CIO at the time, this happens to this day because all my colleagues still tell me this, that IT seems to be pressured the most from a spend standpoint.
Hmm.
It feels like in every budget session, any planning session, it's IT to the front, to cut, to figure out how to be more efficient. So I kind of had that in mind as we were having the conversation, and I thought, if it can actually help me with that, then why not?
Then why not? And you're so right. IT is always pushed to cut. I have a very dear friend in Australia who's general manager of a club. They call them clubs down there. And I asked him directly, so let's talk about why is IT always the first one is like, cut IT and HR really. And
Yeah,
he said, well, slot machines make money and it's
that's
tangible.
it.
Like, well, IT makes money. He goes, yeah, but it's not, it's not right there in your face money. It's a roundabout way.
Yep, yep.
And it's tough. It's really a tough road to hoe because you have to keep everything up and running on a shoestring budget, but they want all the bells and whistles.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very tough balance. Tough to get the point across that IT can drive those efficiencies, especially with all the great technology that we have access to. But unfortunately, too many times viewed as the plumber, so to speak. Just keep the
Yeah.
PCs on, keep the network running, and we're good. So
Yeah, just keep everything up and running so my slot machines don't go down. That's
exactly, exactly. Yeah.
So a bird sat on my shoulder and mentioned that you kind of did this little under the covers, not deal, but put VPS on a deal that you felt that they couldn't resolve.
Yeah,
You want to talk about that? How
sure.
you kind of put their feet to the fire?
Sure, I have, yeah, and it's funny too because Scott said at the time we should start small, and I kind of went the other way. I'm like, no, let's challenge them. Let's make sure that they can do what they say. So we had a renewal for our ERP system at the time. It was literally sitting on my desk. Obviously, a very big renewal, very big system, huge partner. Um, but I knew there still wasn't a ton of inherent risk with it because at the end of the day, I could walk away and say that I'm not going to move forward. I'll just do what I need to do. So that was the one that I put in front of them first because he said, send me one deal, send me a couple deals, and that's how we'll figure out if there's a fit. It turns out that not only did he save me or they saved me money on that renewal, but they actually recovered money. So they went back 3 years and they found that for the past 3 years, we were basically, the deal was kind of over architected financially, and they owed us money. And VPS was able to go and get that money back for me to the tune of $250,000.
Oh my goodness.
So that was, in my opinion, not my opinion, I mean, that's found money. That's money that I didn't even know about. Not only did I have that recovered money, but it set the tone for future renewals. So I knew there would be savings.
Savings, yeah.
Yeah, I was able to apply that recovery to that renewal, which means I was paying a lot less than I would have to. And at that point, I was sold. Like I was hooked. I called Scott and I'm like, let's do this.
That
Let's really expand this relationship.
that's where you say to the business, there's your $250,000 slot machine revenue.
Right, right,
Yeah,
right. That's
right?
that's the mic drop. Absolutely.
Boom. So, so the vendor, okay, and I was a salesperson for a long time, and you get paid commissions on sales. So now the person who negotiates this deal with you, now it's a $250,000 savings. How did they feel about this?
So the vendor was a little surprised at first that somebody different than me or the purchasing department was negotiating the deal. But after all was said and done, one thing we pride ourselves on at virtual procurement is that don't impact the vendor relationship, and it's not about taking money away from the salesperson. It's not getting to a net zero, so they're not going to make commissions. It's a fair price. It is what is that kind of balance price where the vendor is still doing okay, but there is an advocate on the customer side, so we're paying the price that we should be paying.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing is that we run into all the time, and I did this at Mohegan, is a lot of that money that we would save, I was then able to reinvest into new solutions or new products, and the vendors picked up on that. And they thought, well, wait a minute, now Fred is buying all this new stuff that he didn't have the cash for. Well, that was why, because
That,
now I
yeah,
had some additional cash flow.
that's fantastic. Yeah, again, it's a win-win across the board,
Yep,
I would
absolutely.
think. And for deals gone by for the vendor, it's like, okay, now how can we help them if they're bringing back $250,000 in revenue for them? Now, how can we help grow revenue elsewhere? When I say grow revenue for the vendor, they need to grow their own revenue, but you need to get things done as well. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And at the time, it seemed like that's what was missing in the market. There really wasn't that customer advocate to stand on our side purely from a procurement standpoint to say this is what you should be paying. Internally, it was interesting because there's hurt egos. So the first deal you would think we'd be celebrating as a team, that is not the case. There were pride is hurt, egos are impacted because it's like, well, who are these people and how did they do that? And I thought I should have been able to get that. I should have been able to achieve that savings.
So So you're talking about like your internal procurement, or people on your team
Like on the IT team. Yep,
who were responsible for negotiating before?
correct, correct.
Okay. Yeah, I would guess if it that there would be pushback from the
Yeah,
team. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. In the beginning, as long as you take the right steps to kind of smooth that out, it goes away. But in the beginning, it's that kind of typical resistance because there's an outsider, kind of working these deals.
And how did you do that? How did you help them become more accepting and realize that it's not a knock against their ability, but it's just a way to improve the department as a whole. How did you help them get over those concerns?
I think one of the biggest things was something that we continue to do a virtual procurement, which is after the first deal or two, we set up a what we call a training session. And typically, it's to invite the stakeholders that are involved in purchasing, where BPS comes on site and train in what they do and what to expect, what's the process, what to avoid, things like that. I expanded that instead of just having the key people. I did it at an all hands, kind of IT team meeting to give everybody exposure to who they were, which I think helped, make them a little more comfortable. And then it was just continual reinforcement. Celebrate the wins together, showing them that the money was going towards other sometimes cool projects that we could work on because we now have the money. And lastly, I would say it's virtual procurement is somewhat behind the scenes. So we let the customer take credit for it. So the team was able to sit in meetings and say, look, we budgeted $100,000. We only paid $50,000 for this. Look how great, look what I did. So things like that really help to kind of smooth that over with the internal team.
That's it's a good way to go about it, and it gets everybody involved. I think the more that you empower your team to understand the process and own it, then they're more accepting of it. And they almost not almost they do run with it, but they make it even better. It's like, oh, we can do this and we can do that.
Exactly. Empower you. You're absolutely right. Empowerment is another big piece of it. It shouldn't just be me calling Scott or me calling the service delivery team. You guys do it. If you have an idea of how we can get creative with this and save in other areas, let's talk about it and then run with it.
And go for it.
Yep,
Exactly.
absolutely.
So are there any deals or contracts where virtual procurement wasn't able to find you any savings?
Yes. Yeah. Actually, that happened. I don't want to say a lot, but for a multitude of reasons, and they were very transparent about that. Scott, from the initial meeting, said that it's not like it's 100% on. We're not going to find savings or recovery in absolutely everything. And the reason for that is a lot of times it's just because we did do a great job in negotiating, so there's nothing really left to it. But other times it could be internal factors like we didn't give them enough time. We dropped it on them with 24 hours notice. Although they surprised me with even some of those where I'm like, there's no way they're going to do this. We got it late to them, and somehow they'd be able to get some kind of percentage back. Um, or sometimes there could be other factors that are influencing the purchase. And again, it's total transparency. It's just after the analysis is done, after they run it through the pricing analytics tool, if they run into one of those things, it's immediately go back and say, we don't want to get in the way of this purchase. We're not going to be able to find anything. Just move ahead with it.
And what is their average percentage of savings? Do you have uh,
It's usually in the 20% range, which
that's
is
pretty good.
pretty incredible considering the process is it's not like we tell our customers to not negotiate. We want them to go out and negotiate as much as they normally do and truly get a best and final offer. At that point, like that's the contract that we want. So to know that you can get 20% additional on top of that, like there's that potential, and sometimes even more. I mean, we had instances of 40%, 50%, which is just absolutely
That's
amazing.
phenomenal.
On top of a best and final is incredible.
That tells you there's a lot of wiggle room. And
Yes. Yes.
yeah, yeah, there is. But, well, I'm not even going to go down there. I was going to say sometimes vendors are looking at the worst case scenario. They never know. And anyway,
Sure. Sure.
it's
It's it's certainly not. It's most times it's not malicious, right?
no, no.
It's just market factors or whatever that particular situation.
Market factors, it's business, it is what it is. So market, Korea, tell me about Korea. Is that right?
Korea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a great example of the value add, the additional value add of virtual procurement. So fast forward in the relationship, we started looking at we at the time Mohegan started looking at building a property in South Korea.
Ah,
Brand
okay.
new country to us, brand new landscape for us. We didn't know a whole lot about it. Um,
The
as,
culture is different.
right,
Yes.
right. As well as the technology and security landscape. So Scott, who to this day continues to sit on the board of a company called the Jamestown Foundation. So the Jamestown Foundation is a Washington, D.C. based kind of advisory firm that advises the US government, the military, research analysts, things like that, on global events that could impact the US. So whether it's terror events or just odd stuff happening kind of globally, they advise kind of senior other senior government officials on that. Because of that, Scott has just a ton of amazing contacts globally, and he happened to have had somebody that was very familiar with South Korea. So he hooked us up with that person. That person spent, and it was very IT and technology focused or IT and security focused. Um, we were able to spend a lot of time with that person and really get in the weeds of the country itself and what's different than how we do things on on our own soil. It was enlightening. It was eye opening. They brought up things that I never would have considered because again I didn't know the country at the time. It was really a kind of a priceless exercise, and that partner kind of stayed engaged with us throughout. I mean, unfortunately, I left before the property was built, but I remember that partner being a very strategic part of that relationship.
And I'm stuttering here because I'm trying to get my thoughts. Thinking about the South Korean culture, the Asian culture in general. I have another good friend who is, and it sounds so cliche, right? Is in the import business, but everything is out of Asia. It's out of China and Taiwan and Vietnam. Um, the culture, just listening to him talk about what you have to do to not offend.
Exactly.
Yes, and as Americans, we're just like, well, we're blah de da, and
Right.
you
Right.
could really ruin something if you don't have the right coaching
Yeah.
when you're in a new country.
Absolutely. And that's what made it priceless. I mean, not only the kind of the landscape evaluation or the ecosystem evaluation, but from a purchasing standpoint, to your point exactly, you
Yes,
deal with vendors much differently
much differently.
because they're living in that very different culture. So again, priceless to us. And it's not like Scott didn't take a consulting. This was all done, kind of gratis. It was no charge for it, no consulting charges. Just hooked us up with the person who was nice enough to kind of be that partner to
To be
us.
that partner. So obviously they became an important partner to Mohegan, they being VPS,
100%,
because
a hundred
Scott
percent.
is just showing the the value. When you're wanting to become I'll say a business partner as a vendor, when you're wanting to become a business partner with a customer, what's your value differentiator? What do you bring to the table? And when I was in those shoes, My value was you can call me at 4 in the morning. I'll answer the phone. I may not be able to, resolve the problem, but I'll find someone. And I think that's what you're telling me here, that Scott didn't make money, but he helped you regardless because there's deals in the future that come from being reliable.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I kind of took advantage of that as much as I could, even if it was a phone call to him, because, I knew that he had some kind of experience or insight into an area or a technology or solution. So it became a true partner. Like it was no longer a vendor. I feel it was a critical partner to Mohegan and not just Connecticut. We were so impressed with them that we continue to advocate for them as we were very big on mergers and acquisitions at the time, and it was, when I went to a property for the first time, it was one of the first partners I would bring up. Like this, we need to do an introduction to virtual procurement because they were just so impactful.
Just so impactful and right there. All right. Well, it's amazing how fast time goes when you're having a great conversation, and I'm learning so much. But we do need to take another commercial break. It'll be a short break. Everybody will be back. And I want you to, while we're on the break, Fred, I read about not paying if you don't want to.
Mm,
And I thought, that's an interesting clause in a contract. So when we come back, I want to delve into not paying if you don't want to.
awesome.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll be back in a minute. With over 50 years global experience, BPOS delivers comprehensive point of sale solutions tailored for casinos, powered by a robust enterprise platform with all the integrations you need, from player rewards, PMS, and camera systems to business intelligence and more. BPOS seamlessly connects your operations. Our solutions cover point of sale systems, online ordering, self-serve kiosks, mobile ordering, pay at table options, QR code ordering, KDS, inventory management, enterprise reporting, and beyond. Backed by exceptional US-based customer service and support, we ensure your casino's operations run smoothly and efficiently. Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for listening as we explore virtual procurement services. And now we're going to dive into a really unique contract clause that I've never seen in my days, and it's not paying if you don't want to. So, Fred, that really surprises me. And is it really true? And can you kind of explain, did you have to invoke it? That'd
Sure.
be
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a very unique clause. I had never run into it either. And to this day, we still use it. So it's one of the things that actually, an additional thing that hooked me at the time at Mohegan, because it meant there were really no teeth in the contract. So even if they screwed up on that first contract and we ended up not doing anything with it, I didn't have to pay anything. Um, so, like I said, it's still a clause in all of our contracts today, and it's basically our guarantee that you will be satisfied with the services, that we will do our best to get you a fair price, that we won't impact your vendors. We will not change solutions, which is what a lot of other consulting companies do
yeah.
to try to save money. It's like, well, instead of X vendor, we'll get Y vendor. Well, that's not what the company wants. They're the experts, right? They're the ones that chose the solution. An outsider really has no place in changing that from a procurement standpoint. So, but it's hard to believe. It's that whole sounds too good to be true thing. So this clause, I think, helps people to understand that they can get past all of that, and it's okay to engage because we will be successful, and you don't have to pay us if you don't want to.
If you don't want to. That's very, very interesting.
And
Um,
you had asked about there was one memorable time that I did have to use that. So we had for a large telecommunications organization that we had a relationship with. We had a capital purchase as well as some renewals coming up at that time. And I, of course, gave it to VPS. It was a longer lead thing because there were a lot of legs in this contract. So a lot of moving parts. So they had worked on it, I would say, for 2 or 3 months, and it was a lot of work because again, there's just a lot to it. In the meantime, towards the end of that research, I had found out that we had a large sponsorship deal with this organization to help sponsor another one of our organizations. Well, obviously, that's a pretty like influencing factor that needs to be factored in, and it means that we may not be able to move forward with the savings because, of course, BPS came back and said, yeah, we found substantial savings. The problem is the sponsorship piece wasn't tied into it, and it actually outweighed the savings that they found.
Ah, okay.
So I unfortunately had to. I believe Bobby actually first reached out to Scott to give him the news. I then had to follow up, kind of nervous, thinking, yeah, they have this clause, but am I going to have to pay for 3 months of consulting? They did all this work. They actually shared that work with us, so we got to see kind of itemized, what they felt that we should be paying. And at the end of the day, Scott said, no, like we have that clause in there for that reason. You don't have to move forward. You don't have to pay for it. We're going to give you the results. If you want to use it in the future, that's fine, but we get it. There's situations like this where you're not going to be able to do.
Where and the overarching savings in other areas makes up for having to invoke the clause in this one
100%.
instance. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So when I introduced you, you're the CTO of virtual procurement. And the whole time we've been talking, you were the CIO of Mohegan. Obviously, there's a change that occurred. And can you tell me about that? Did you reach out to them? Did they reach out to you? Was it a aha moment? What happened?
So a little bit of all of that, and another funny story. There's a lot of funny stories. For some reason between Scott and I, kind of the origins. So in 2019, 14 years with Mohegan, I just felt it was time for a change. Pretty long tenure for a CIO. Really anywhere. It
Very
seems
long
like
tenure.
they change often. I wanted to move on to something else. I was kind of getting to that point in life where I'm like, I want a new challenge. So Scott didn't know that I had actually left the organization. This was like May of 2019. It was probably 2 weeks within kind of me leaving. Scott reaches out, gets my admin, who was my admin at the time, because you're going to love this. He wanted to ask me if I wanted to be on the cover of GNL with him. It was
Oh,
going to be like a showcase article
a
on
show. Yeah.
virtual procurement. My admin's like, I got bad news. Fred's not here. And again, Scott had no idea. So he reached out to me to say, to kind of get the backstory. What was I doing? Just kind of checking in, just because he's a very kind-hearted person. Is everything okay? And I said, yeah, I'm just looking for new opportunities. He goes, listen, spend the time looking, figure out what you want to do. If you don't have a job in 6 months or whatever, he said, call me. And I would love to have you as part of the team to kind of help out on the IT side. So I did exactly that. That very typical. I'm going to take some time. I'm going to recharge, clear the head, figure out what exactly I want to do for the rest of my professional life. Um,
What do I want to be when I grow up? Yes.
exactly, exactly. Interviewed a bunch of places. I was pretty committed to staying in the Connecticut area just because of my children's ages at the time. I'd already moved them once. I didn't want to put them through that again. Um, so around the November timeframe, I still hadn't decided on anywhere. Nothing really made sense for me. And I started getting kind of intrigued by this notion of certainly not a startup because he had been in business since 2009, but wouldn't it be cool to work for that, kind of smaller organization, which is how I kind of started my career in smaller consulting groups, to kind of return to that, to help them build almost that ground up IT infrastructure to help them grow. So I called Scott. Scott, true to form, was like, that's awesome. Let's start it as a consulting gig just to make sure it's almost like that cultural fit thing that,
Mm-hmm.
that we do as a
Mm-hmm.
company.
Yeah.
He's like, let's start it as a consulting gig because that way, if you're not happy or if it just doesn't work out, it's much easier to move along. And again, fast forward to today, and CTO at Virtual Procurement have seen amazing growth, have hopefully had an impact on the IT side and the security side to help them grow. But a little more to the story than that. So I'm a consultant through, we'll fast forward to March of 2020. And
All right. Yeah.
we all
Now
know
here we
what,
go. I was just thinking when you said November 2019, I'm like, okay, that's when the reports were just starting to trickle out.
absolutely. You're right. At the
Yeah.
beginning of the year, then it was like we see a case in Washington, we see these cases popping up, you don't know what's going on. So in March, we had, right before all of it was kind of officially announced, we were on a train ride to DC to meet with another potential partner that had some ideas in the procurement space. And on the train ride down, it was all about the political climate shifting. Um, we had our meetings there. I started to get a little bit nervous because it seemed like the world was starting to change a bit. On the train ride back, it's like the world fell apart.
Oh,
That
yeah.
was the major announcements that were shutting everything down. I started getting calls from all my colleagues in the gaming industry that are like they're literally talking about shutting our casinos down, getting rid of people. It was chaos. So I, of course, am like, well, that's not good because I'm now just a consultant at this small organization. He was nice enough to keep me on board. Now
Still
what?
have to pay the mortgage. Yeah.
Right, exactly, exactly. Nobody's hiring now. I kind of can't just put things on hold for that long to until the world kind of straightens itself back out. Ironically, in the middle of it, I would say I think it was like April. Um, he did the opposite of what the world was doing, and he's like, you know what? Despite all this craziness, we're continuing to be successful. Love what you're doing from an IT standpoint. We want to continue this growth trajectory. Brought me on full time and said, you have a home here, which was, to this day, I just find absolutely incredible. Um, so yeah, at that point, I was a full time employee, and again, fast forward to today, and just loved every second of it.
And I started a new role at the beginning of the pandemic. I went to Google, and it was interesting because I remember calling my then future boss. Everything had been shut down, and I said, "We're still doing this, right?" He's like, "Absolutely." And it was, in retrospect, the best time to take on new people because you have the time to assimilate, you have the time to really become part of the new company because things have shut down. It's harder to do business, but at the same, you're able to gently kind of slide into the new role.
It's a great perspective. That's a
Yeah.
really great perspective. Yeah.
And so you're a leader at VPS. How was it leading? Did you have a team? How was it leading the team
It
during
was
that time?
it was different, certainly different than anything I ever faced. We had to get kind of creative because obviously gaming was a huge, the largest vertical that we had at the time, along with healthcare. Both were getting impacted differently, but significantly. I mean, like we said, and gaming was shut down. I mean, casinos were just quiet. We were able to help them. We kind of said, what value can we add? We're still in business. In addition to obviously some things had to continue to be paid, like maintenance things, and that's
Yeah.
what we saw. It was cut all the spend, but we need to keep the lights on still, so we'll pay all this maintenance.
I
We
was
continue
gonna, you
to
still
help them.
have to roll the date. You still have to.
Exactly,
Exactly.
exactly.
And
It's not
roll
like
the tape. People who are in gaming know what that means.
yeah, no, you're exactly right. You can't literally just hit pause on the entire operation. So we helped them with that continued maintenance and trying to get reductions, especially since revenue was impacted. Um, we also helped to pause contracts, which was a pretty unique approach because obviously vendors were, I mean, everybody kind of saw it from the operator side, but the vendors had the same issues, right? The vendors were trying to figure out how are we going to survive.
Hmm.
So we helped on that side as well, either pausing contracts, helping to kind of renegotiate contracts to make sure that, because we knew there was a light at the end of the tunnel. It was tough to see at that point, but um, when everything finally calms down, we need to maintain this relationship. So we kind of help that moving along. On the healthcare side, it was interesting. So it was that in
Oh,
addition
boy.
to we had a ton of great contacts from a sourcing standpoint just because of what we do. They were having a hard time, as we all know, sourcing anything, masks, kind of surgical gear, gowns, all of that stuff that you heard about in the news. There was a severe shortage nationwide. We, for several of our clients, became almost the sourcing arm, and we would take the time because they didn't have it, because most of them were reduced in staff because they may have a procurement team of 10, but they sent 8 home, so now they only have 2. We kind of took that on for them and said, let's get creative and figure out how we can continue to get this very vital equipment to your hospital, while you're figuring out how to kind of do that on your own. So that's what we did.
That is a beautiful pivot to continue to maintain value during such a difficult time in the world. I was going to say our country, but no, it's in the world.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then internally, the other thing I'll say is I think we did, and this came from Scott, and our COO, Raymond. Um, it was very important, as you know, to keep kind of emotions or spirits high. So we changed, and there was a point in time where we were doing almost like stand-up type meetings 4 or 5 times a day. And it wasn't about getting updates, it was to make sure everybody was okay, right?
Mhm.
It was constant check-ins with everyone because, I mean, emotionally, a lot of people were just, it was a disaster. We had no idea what was going on. So, from an internal leadership standpoint, I think Scott and Raymond did an amazing job in keeping kind of everybody together, everybody on the right track, spirits high, maybe even a laugh or two. We would kind of sneak in there despite the world crumbling.
You
So,
have to. You have to.
absolutely.
Uh, it was such a scary time, and you have to be able to keep spirits up. Business has to continue, even though the world is shut down. You still have to keep everybody motivated, keep them wanting to grow and keep the company viable so that when it does start, and it did, it started trickling back in a little bit at a time. You look back now and it seems like it was so long ago
It
that we
does.
dealt with that.
It
It's
does. And
a
it's really
lifetime.
not that long ago.
No, it's not. Um, if you could do anything differently when you were working with VPS at Mohegan Sun, is there something that just stands out?
I would say do a better job at keeping my finger on the pulse of the relationship. I mean, Scott jokes around to this day and says, I was a horrible customer. And as much as I like to fight him on it, I don't think I was horrible, but I wasn't the best customer.
He's not
Um,
completely wrong.
he's not, he's really not completely wrong. I can make every excuse in the book. I mean, what I usually say is, this was a thousandth of a slice of what I was doing on a daily basis. However, it was such a significant slice that I should have spent more time on it. Because what I found out afterwards was some of that kind of ego and pride thing persisted. And I had certain people in the organization that were actually kind of going against the processes that we put in place, to make sure that VPS had a shot at just about everything we were purchasing, as well as all of our, not only in Connecticut, but all of our other locations. So I relied on the team, much like Bobby. I like to just surround myself with good people and kind of let them do their thing. But you need to have that trust to do it. I had
Yes.
that trust, but it wasn't always happening. So I kick myself to this day, because I know there could have been so much more savings for the organization. And I feel like I didn't stay close enough to it. So for people that are engaging now, it's just highly encouraged to make sure you stay engaged. And I'm not saying like a full time job. That's what we're here for. We'll take care of all that, but just make sure that the team is staying honest about getting stuff over to VPS, because at the end of the day, we will have a significant
Well,
impact.
it can't hurt, right? What's
No,
what's
that's
what's
it.
the worst that can come back? Oh yeah, you got the best deal. We can't do anything for you. I mean, there's no, it's all upside is the way I look at it.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
it's all upside. And as an employee, so going back, he says you were a horrible customer or a difficult. Well, we won't say horrible,
Difficult.
just
There we go. Yeah.
difficult. Now that you work for VPS, do you see that in your customers or do you deal with the customers?
So I don't deal directly with them. I'm not on the service delivery side. My role is really to maintain all the technology and almost more importantly the security of our organization. Um, However, obviously, I'm in constant contact with I see the operations on a daily basis, and I still see some of it. But I think we do a tremendous job in kind of overcoming that and making sure that we have the right people engaged, so that it doesn't happen.
So
Um,
yes.
and it's not to say that he didn't do it then. I think that's why he says I was a horrible customer. He would check in. My service delivery person would check in. I just wasn't focused enough to make sure things were staying on track.
It's difficult. I mean, when you think about running IT for a casino or even a hospital or any organization, it's coming at you. This department, that department, this is going on. The vendor wants, everybody wants a piece of you.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Yep. Well, this is
Everyone
good
wants.
because now Scott's going to hear you say that, so he's going to understand it wasn't totally me.
It's true. As a vendor, I try to be cognizant of that, and I try to be respectful of time. Do you have time? I promise, I won't take up any more than this. But on the flip side too, at least don't just ignore me. At least just say, "Hey, I got your note. I can't talk to you right now, and we'll get together in 2 weeks or something." But
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, Fred, unfortunately, it's about time to wrap up here. Um, it's really been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot. And I wish there was a company like VPS when I was sitting on that side of the desk because I think as good as I was at negotiating contracts that I thought I was, we'll put it that way, as good as I thought I was. It would have been nice to have, somebody in my court to make it even better so that it's the icing on the cake. Um, I want to thank you for your time. And thank you for being a GNL community member. We love you. I mean, you were a board member and now you're a sponsor. So
One of my
welcome.
one of my favorite groups, no doubt. Not only my favorite group, my favorite events, two events now, which is even better. We all love the one event. Now we get excited because there's two times we get to,
I
you
know
know,
the forum.
everybody.
It's great.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. But yeah, I really appreciate the time here. And like I said, love being a community member here.
And obviously you'll be there in October
I
when
will.
we have the roundtable this year. So we look forward to seeing you. Are you going to play golf with us?
I am unfortunately not a golfer. I think I golfed in it 1 year, and I was basically told to put my clubs back and just drive the cart. And that was very, very justified. And it's because I can't swing a club to save my life. So I let Scott and whoever else is going to attend from our company, they could golf.
I live in a golf community and I have been trying for 5 years to take up golf. I have my clubs, I have everything, and I always find an excuse not to go out and hit the balls. But one day I will. My excuse at the round table is I'm helping Jeannie, so I can't. But
There
oh
you go. There you
darn.
go.
Well, I look forward to seeing you in October. Thank you again for your time. Everyone, it's time to say goodbye. And as usual, I just want to say make it a great day. And we hope to see you next time on Gaming and Leisure's Voice.
Thanks again.
Thank you.